A single thread can change how you see the world. This is the labyrinth, far more than a simple maze. It is a powerful symbol of life's journey, a puzzle that has challenged brilliant minds from the dusty plains of ancient Crete to the glowing screens of modern Silicon Valley. We are about to explore the Labyrinth Effect, uncovering how these twisting paths have fundamentally shaped our philosophy, our science, and our art for thousands of years. By the end, you will understand the hidden connections between ancient myths and modern artificial intelligence. We will see how a hero's quest with a ball of string led to the code that cracked the Enigma machine, and why your brain lights up in the same way whether you are walking a stone circle or solving a complex equation. What personal challenge feels most like a labyrinth to you? Deep within the stone halls of King Minos' palace, a story was born from the shadows. The myth of the Minotaur and its labyrinth is far more than an ancient ghost story. It is humanity's first great blueprint for a puzzle, a narrative where intellect and primal fear collide. The legendary craftsman Daedalus did not just build a maze, he constructed a perfect metaphor. The historian Plutarch later captured its dual nature, seeing it as both a physical prison and a profound psychological test. At its heart, the myth is about navigation. The hero Theseus does not simply rely on strength. He enters with a plan, using Ariadne's thread as his guide. This simple ball of string represents the first algorithm, a logical process to retrace your steps and solve an impossibly complex problem. The Minotaur waiting at the center is not just a monster. It is the terrifying embodiment of the unknown, the chaotic result we all fear at the heart of our most difficult challenges. The labyrinth itself becomes a map of the human mind confronting something it cannot immediately comprehend. For centuries, this powerful symbolism has called to artists and thinkers. Dante envisioned the circles of hell as a descending labyrinth of sin. The writer Jorge Luis Borges saw entire universes in its endless corridors. This ancient story mirrors our own daily struggles. Navigating a baffling new software update, untangling a complicated social situation, or finding a path through personal grief, each is a modern labyrinth. We are all Theseus, clutching our own version of Ariadne's thread, hoping it is strong enough to lead us back into the light. This foundational myth set a pattern that would echo for millennia, but the labyrinth's influence was only just beginning to weave itself into the foundations of human thought. Long before Theseus faced the Minotaur, the labyrinth was taking shape under a much older sun. Etched into pottery fragments in ancient Egypt and carved into clay tablets in Mesopotamia, we find the earliest known mazes. These are not the branching puzzles of later myths, but single, unbroken paths winding in complex spirals. Archaeologists call these unicursal labyrinths, a continuous ribbon of a journey with no false turns or dead ends. Their purpose was likely spiritual, not recreational. A piece of Jersey pottery from Egypt dating back thousands of years bears a simple spiral design. Scholars like Hermann Kern believe these patterns acted as symbolic boundaries, perhaps protecting the contents of a vessel or guiding a spirit on a prescribed path to the underworld. In Mesopotamia, the grand ziggurats themselves, those stepped temples reaching for the heavens, may have been designed with labyrinthine passages. Their construction mirrored a cosmic order, a physical representation of the winding path a soul must take through the celestial spheres. One clay tablet discovered at Tel Hamel appears to show a city plan that doubles as a ritual maze. Imagine a participant walking this prescribed route during a ceremony, each turn representing a stage in a symbolic death and rebirth. This was the labyrinth as a functional tool, a sacred technology for understanding humanity's place in a vast and often incomprehensible universe. The persistence of this same symbolic form across such distant and disconnected cultures is staggering. What does it tell us? It suggests a universal human impulse to map the intangible, to give physical form to life's greatest mysteries. These ancient artists were not just drawing patterns, they were encoding a fundamental truth about existence onto clay and stone. The journey itself was the destination, a concept that would travel across continents and centuries, slowly transforming from a ritual path into a legendary puzzle. The labyrinth's journey from a sacred boundary to a popular symbol accelerated in the classical world. Walk through the bustling agora of ancient Athens, and you would find the maze motif everywhere. It was stamped onto coins, a famous example being the coin of Knossos, which circulated the image of the Cretan labyrinth far and wide. Soldiers carried it on their shields, and wealthy citizens had intricate labyrinth designs set into the floors of their villas. This was the labyrinth's great transformation, evolving from a terrifying myth into an accessible cultural and artistic emblem. The Greeks and Romans did not just inherit the symbol, they adopted and adapted it, pulling it from the realm of pure mythology into the decorative and philosophical spaces of daily life. In Rome, this was especially evident. The ruins of Pompeii and other Roman sites reveal stunning mosaic labyrinths, often accompanied by the Latin phrase Labyrinthus hic habitat Minotaurus, meaning the labyrinth, here lives the Minotaur. One compelling example comes from the House of the Labyrinth in Pompeii. This mosaic was not merely a static image to be admired from a distance. It invited a viewer to visually trace its path, to engage in an active, almost meditative practice of following the twists and turns. This transformed the labyrinth from a story about a hero into a personal, contemplative experience for any citizen. The Roman architect Vitruvius wrote extensively about complex architectural layouts, showing a practical appreciation for these puzzle-like structures in design and urban planning, seeing order within apparent complexity. But why did these civilizations, known for their logic and engineering, find such enduring value in a symbol of confusion? They recognized its deeper power to represent order within chaos. Philosophers like Plato used the concept of a winding, difficult path as a metaphor for the soul's journey toward enlightenment and truth. The labyrinth was also a feature of public life, incorporated into ritual dances known as the Troy Game, where young men would execute complex, maze-like patterns on horseback as a public spectacle. It was a game, a piece of art, and a philosophical principle all at once. The classical world democratized the labyrinth, making it a shared touchstone for contemplating life's complex journey. This philosophical framing, seeing structured patterns in the chaos of existence, was a seed that would patiently wait to be rediscovered, finding fertile ground in the devout and structured mind of the medieval era. The cool, worn stone of Chartres Cathedral holds a secret underfoot, a sprawling pavement labyrinth laid out for the faithful. This was the medieval mind reshaping an ancient symbol, turning the terrifying maze of the Minotaur into a guided spiritual journey. Here, the labyrinth was no longer a puzzle of confusion but a path of devotion, a substitute pilgrimage for those who could not travel to Jerusalem. Pilgrims would walk its intricate circuits on their knees, their physical pain and steady progress mirroring the soul's difficult ascent toward salvation. The center no longer held a monster, it represented God, a divine presence awaiting at the end of an arduous but guaranteed route. This was the labyrinth's great Christian transformation, a complete reinvention for a new age of faith. Theologians like St. Augustine saw the human condition itself as a labyrinth of sin, a twisted path from which only divine grace could provide a straight way out. The design of these cathedral labyrinths, found in places like Amiens and Rheims, was deliberately unicursal. There were no false turns or dead ends, only a single, winding path that forced you to double back, to seemingly move away from your goal before you could get closer. This was the point. The journey was meant to be long and contemplative, not short and efficient. The Chartres Labyrinth is a stunning example of this sacred engineering. Its design is a masterpiece of hidden codes with 11 concentric circles and 112 outer lunations that track lunar cycles. Walking this path was a physical prayer, an embodied practice that fused muscle and bone with spirit and mind. Each step was an act of penance, each turn a meditation on a biblical station. How did this tactile ritual change a person's understanding of faith? It made abstract belief tangible. You did not just think about your spiritual journey, you felt it in your aching legs and saw its geometric perfection laid out before you. This fusion of physical action and deep introspection did more than save souls. It trained minds to see complex problems as structured paths with a solution at their heart. That very mindset, born from kneeling on cold cathedral stone, would soon stand up and walk straight into the blossoming intellect of the Renaissance. The labyrinth's path now turns from the cool stone of cathedrals to the sun-drenched gardens of a Renaissance prince. Here, the symbol was reborn not as a path to God, but as a celebration of the human mind. In the private studiolo of a nobleman, amidst shelves of rare books and celestial globes, you would find exquisite mechanical puzzles. These were not children's toys but sophisticated challenges crafted from brass and wood, designed to test logic and dexterity. They reflected a profound shift in thinking. The labyrinth was shedding its medieval skin, transforming into an emblem of human intellect and the thrilling, sometimes perilous, pursuit of knowledge. This intellectual revolution was literally carved into the landscape. Across Europe, the formal gardens of palaces and villas became sprawling canvases for the Hedge maze. These were not the simple unicursal paths of old. They were multicursal puzzles filled with deliberate dead ends and false turns. The Villa Pisani labyrinth in Italy stands as a legendary example. Its high, intricate walls of hornbeam were designed not for spiritual contemplation, but for a playful, social test of wit and patience. Navigating it became a fashionable pastime for the aristocracy, a physical demonstration of one's ability to reason and problem solve. The design was a clear statement. Humanity could now master nature not through prayer, but through art and geometry. Great minds of the era saw the labyrinth as a blueprint for the universe itself. Leonardo da Vinci filled his notebooks with complex knot designs and architectural plans that pulsed with labyrinthine principles. In these intricate, interlocking patterns, he saw a reflection of cosmic order, the winding veins of the human body, and the mind's own boundless capacity to untangle complexity. This metaphor also wove its way into the literature of the time. In Edmund Spenser's epic poem, The Faerie Queene, the hero must navigate the dangerous house of Buserain, a metaphorical labyrinth of deceit and desire, representing the internal and external challenges one must overcome through virtue and reason. Puzzle books and cunning mechanical toys became coveted possessions among the educated elite, turning the act of solving a maze into a secular, intellectual virtue. What does this playful engagement with complexity reveal about the Renaissance view of humanity? It celebrated an unshakable confidence in the human capacity to navigate any puzzle, whether in a garden, a poem, or the natural world. The journey was no longer a prescribed path to salvation, but an open-ended adventure of discovery. This celebration of human reason, however, would soon face its own rigorous test, as the winding paths of the garden maze were about to be measured by the straight edge of Enlightenment logic. The elegant salons of 18th-century Paris hummed with a new kind of energy, where the twisting paths of the labyrinth were laid flat on tabletops and dissected with ruthless logic. Philosophers and mathematicians saw these ancient puzzles not as spiritual journeys, but as formal systems waiting to be decoded. The labyrinth was stripped of its mystery and reborn as a pure exercise for the rational mind. This was the Enlightenment's great project, to apply the sharp tools of reason to every tangled problem, whether in nature, society, or thought itself. Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz perfectly embodied this shift. His development of calculus was a master key for navigating the complex mazes of continuous change, while his dream of a universal characteristic, a symbolic language to resolve all intellectual disputes, imagined the entire universe of knowledge as a single, vast, but ultimately solvable labyrinth. He believed that with the right logical rules, every path could be mapped and every truth reached by a straight line of reason. This analytical spirit fueled the publication of dedicated puzzle collections, books filled with logical conundrums and intricate mazes designed not for spiritual contemplation but for sharpening the intellect like a whetstone on a blade. A profound example is John Amos Comenius's work, Labyrinth of the World and Paradise of the Heart. He used the maze as a powerful allegory for the individual's quest for true knowledge amidst the overwhelming confusion and false paths of the world, suggesting that the right method could lead one through. This era also saw the quiet birth of mathematical fields like topology, which studies the properties of space that are preserved under continuous deformation. At its heart, topology is concerned with the essential path of a journey, much like the unbroken line of a unicursal labyrinth, asking what remains true even when the path is stretched or twisted. How did this fundamental shift from seeing the world as a mystery to seeing it as a methodology change us? It established the unshakable belief that complex problems were not divine tests or chaotic messes, but structured challenges with discoverable solutions. This was the crucial mental groundwork, the intellectual infrastructure, upon which every future scientific revolution would be built. The labyrinth was no longer a place to get lost, but a system to be solved, and that very mindset was about to be tested on an industrial scale. But the orderly gardens of the Enlightenment could not contain the storm of human emotion forever. A new generation of artists and writers turned their gaze inward, and the labyrinth followed, becoming a dark and sprawling castle of the inner self. The Romantics saw the greatest mystery not in the external world, but in the twisting corridors of their own consciousness, a place where reason's torch cast long, dancing shadows. This was no longer a puzzle to be solved with logic, but a sublime and terrifying landscape to be felt. The crumbling mansions of Gothic fiction, like Edgar Allan Poe's House of Usher, are not just buildings. They are architectural manifestations of a troubled mind, their labyrinthine halls echoing with hidden guilt and psychological decay. In Nathaniel Hawthorne's stories, a simple black veil becomes a maze of social isolation and secret sin, trapping its wearer in a psychological prison of his own making. The labyrinth became the perfect metaphor for memory itself, a haunted palace where past traumas and desires lay buried in locked rooms, waiting to be stumbled upon. The German painter Caspar David Friedrich captured this new orientation perfectly. His solitary figures stand with their backs to us, gazing out over misty seas or rugged chasms. These vast, ambiguous landscapes are natural labyrinths of the spirit, reflecting an internal journey of longing, doubt, and awe. The path is no longer clear, the center is no longer God or a solution. It is the elusive and often painful truth of the self. Why did this imagery resonate so deeply with the Romantic soul? They believed that intuition and raw emotion were truer guides than cold rationality. The orderly hedge maze was a social game, but the psychological labyrinth was a solitary, essential confrontation. It acknowledged the beautiful chaos within, the fragmented pieces of identity that could never be neatly assembled by any Enlightenment philosopher. This profound shift, this mapping of the interior world, would provide the foundational blueprint for a new science dedicated entirely to navigating the human mind itself. The relentless clatter of the loom and the whistle of the steam engine built a new kind of labyrinth, one not of stone or myth, but of iron, steam, and human ambition. The 19th century enclosed humanity within a maze of its own making, a vast and interlocking system of factories, railways, and sprawling cities. Where the Romantics explored the inner self, the industrial age confronted an external world of dizzying, man-made complexity. The schematic diagram of a steam engine, with its intricate network of pistons and valves, was a mechanical maze. The tangled, overcrowded streets of London and New York became an urban puzzle, a place of both immense opportunity and crushing disorientation. Thinkers like Charles Dickens captured this new reality with haunting clarity. His novel Bleak House opens not with a character, but with a thick, pervasive London fog, a perfect metaphor for the impenetrable maze of legal systems and social injustice that ensnared its inhabitants. The city itself was the antagonist, a labyrinth of soot and shadows. Yet this chaos demanded new forms of order. The revolutionary sewage system designed by Joseph Bazalgette for London was a direct response to a labyrinthine problem. His network of intercepting sewers was a masterpiece of underground engineering, a planned path carved beneath the city's random streets to solve the deadly puzzle of waste and disease. Above ground, the Great Crystal Palace exhibition of 1851 presented a different kind of maze, a breathtaking glass structure filled with a seemingly endless array of global industry and invention. It was a cathedral of progress, its layout designed to guide visitors through a curated labyrinth of human achievement. How did society begin to navigate these self-created complexities? It developed new tools. Detailed ordnance survey maps charted the growing cities, while the new science of statistics attempted to quantify the human river flowing through them. The very principles of factory floor planning, designed to maximize efficiency and minimize wasted movement, were exercises in solving a small, daily labyrinth. This urgent need to manage vast, interconnected systems gave rise to entirely new forms of analysis and organization. The maze was no longer a metaphor for the soul or a test of faith. It was a practical problem of logistics and survival, a challenge that would soon require thinking not just with human minds, but with machines. Carl Jung's patients often arrived with dreams of spirals and winding corridors, images he recognized as ancient maps of the psyche itself. In the quiet of his consulting room, these visions were not signs of confusion but blueprints for a profound inner journey. Jung identified the labyrinth as a core archetype, a universal symbol residing in what he called the collective unconscious. He saw its twisting path as a representation of individuation, the lifelong process of integrating the conscious ego with the hidden depths of the personal and collective unconscious to become a whole, authentic self. For Jung, the goal was never to escape the labyrinth but to embrace its entire route, a process he termed the circumambulation of the self. Walking its path mirrored the difficult but necessary work of facing one's shadow, acknowledging different aspects of the personality, and moving steadily toward the center where transformation awaits. This psychological model reframes the classic myth. The Minotaur is no longer an external monster to be slain, but the terrifying, repressed parts of our own nature that we must confront with courage. Ariadne's thread becomes the thin, vital line of consciousness itself, the guiding awareness that allows us to venture into our own darkness without becoming permanently lost. Modern therapists have since adopted this powerful symbolism. In practices like sand play therapy or guided visualization, clients might construct or walk a symbolic labyrinth as a way to access buried memories or navigate a current life crisis. Imagine a person grappling with a deep-seated fear whose dreams repeatedly return to a maze. Through analysis, they begin to see each turn as a choice, each corridor as a memory, slowly following their own thread of insight toward the core of their anxiety. What does this Jungian lens reveal? It suggests that the labyrinth's enduring power is not just cultural or historical, but biological. Its form is etched into the very structure of the human mind, making the act of walking one a deeply resonant ritual of self-discovery. This internal mapping of the psyche, however, was occurring just as another revolution was beginning to think about paths and problems in a radically new way. The rhythmic clatter of the Enigma machine built walls of shifting code, a cryptographic labyrinth with consequences measured in human lives. The 20th century transformed the ancient maze into an abstract battlefield where information itself became the ultimate puzzle. This was the Labyrinth Effect applied with terrifying urgency, a high-stakes game where the Minotaur was not a mythical beast, but the grim reality of lost battles and sunken ships. At the heart of this effort was Alan Turing and his team at Bletchley Park, facing a machine that generated an almost infinite number of possible cipher combinations every single day. The Enigma was not a simple substitution cipher where one letter always stands for another. It was a polyalphabetic cipher, a system where the encryption alphabet changed with every key pressed, creating a maze that reconfigured itself with every turn. To break it, the codebreakers had to find a flaw in the machine's complex wiring, a predictable pattern or a repeated mistake in the German operator's procedures that could serve as their Ariadne's thread. They built massive, room-sized computational machines called bombs, which used logical deduction to test thousands of possible settings at breathtaking speed, hunting for the one correct path through the encryption. This was not a solitary quest, it was a monumental team effort, a symphony of mathematical minds, linguists, and crossword puzzle champions all working in concert. Their success demonstrated that even the most brilliantly designed intellectual maze could be navigated with persistence, innovation, and collaborative thinking. Another profound example emerged from the Pacific Theater, where the Navajo code talkers used their complex, unwritten language to create a labyrinth the enemy could not even enter. Their code was not based on machinery, but on living culture, a verbal puzzle that remained unbroken throughout the entire war. The very structure of their language, with its nuanced tones and syntax unfamiliar to Japanese cryptographers, became an impenetrable wall. How did this immense pressure of global conflict change our approach to problem solving? It forced the development of systematic methodologies that we still use today in computer science and data encryption. The relentless need to decrypt enemy messages accelerated the birth of modern computing, turning theoretical concepts into tangible machines built for a single purpose: to find a path through the maze. The lessons carved out in the tense huts of Bletchley Park did not end with the war. They became the foundational logic for the digital world we now inhabit. The hum of the first computers was a new kind of silence, the sound of electricity thinking. Inside those room-sized machines, the labyrinth was reborn not in stone, but in pure logic. Early computer scientists did not just use mazes as a test. They built their entire discipline upon the maze principles. At Bell Labs, Claude Shannon constructed his famous maze-solving mechanical mouse, Theseus. This tiny robot navigated a grid of 25 squares, its every turn dictated by a primitive electronic brain that learned the correct path through trial and error. It was a miniature, physical proof that a machine could conquer a labyrinth. This was not a game, it was foundational research into artificial intelligence. The maze provided a perfectly constrained universe, a sandbox where researchers could develop and test the very algorithms that would later power our world. From this work emerged essential pathfinding tools like Dijkstra's algorithm, a method for finding the shortest path between points, and the later a star algorithm, which intelligently guides a search toward its goal. These are the digital descendants of Ariadne's thread, the logical processes that now direct everything from the GPS in your car to the data packets racing across the internet. But the maze was also becoming a place to play and explore. Before the dazzling graphics of Space War, there were text-based worlds like Will Crowther's colossal cave adventure. This game presented players with a sprawling textual labyrinth, its descriptions of twisting passages and mysterious chambers existing entirely in the mind's eye. You typed commands like go north or take keys, and the parser, a new kind of digital gatekeeper, would determine your path. To navigate this world, programmers had to invent new concepts. They used graph theory to map the connections between rooms, recursion to allow a function to call itself and delve deeper into a cave system, and backtracking to systematically undo wrong turns and try new paths when you reached a dead end. Why was this simple structure so vital? The maze reduced the immense complexity of decision-making to a clean, mathematical model. It was the ideal training ground for a new form of intelligence, teaching machines and their programmers how to navigate any complex, branching problem. The winding path of the ancient labyrinth had become the fundamental architecture of the digital world. Frank Gehry's Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao does not simply house art, it is the art. Its swirling titanium curves and cascading interior volumes create a space that feels alive, a labyrinth designed not to confuse but to provoke wonder. You do not walk through this building with a predetermined path. You discover it, each turn offering a new perspective, an unexpected connection between a sculpture and the light filtering down from above. This is architecture as an experience, a deliberate departure from the straight lines and predictable corridors of traditional museums. Architects like Zaha Hadid took this principle even further. Her buildings, with their soaring, fluid forms and complex interlocking spaces, are like frozen motion. Walking through the Maxi Museum in Rome is to navigate a landscape of ramps and overlapping galleries, a spatial puzzle that encourages you to constantly reorient yourself and see art from multiple angles simultaneously. This design philosophy, often called an architectural promenade, transforms the visitor from a passive observer into an active explorer. The entire city can become this kind of labyrinth. Tokyo's Shinjuku district, with its layered streets, hidden alleyways, and vertigo-inducing neon signs, is a vast, unplanned maze of human activity. There is no single correct route, only your own unique path through its vibrant chaos. Conversely, the Seattle Central Library, designed by Rem Koolhaas, is a meticulously planned labyrinth. Its striking, angular form houses a continuous spiral of bookshelves, but its layout of escalators and meeting rooms can feel intentionally disorienting, breaking down the conventional, often hierarchical organization of a public library to create chance encounters and spontaneous discoveries. Why would an architect choose to challenge us in this way? Daniel Libeskind's Jewish Museum in Berlin provides a profound answer. The building's zinc-clad, zigzagging form and its disorienting, empty voids are not merely stylistic choices. They are a narrative written in steel and concrete, a physical embodiment of the ruptured history of Jewish life in Germany. To walk its corridors is to feel a palpable sense of absence and dislocation, making the architecture itself a powerful storyteller. Getting lost in such spaces does more than just disorient us. It forces a deeper kind of engagement. Your brain must work to construct a mental map, paying close attention to textures, sounds, and sightlines you would otherwise ignore. This heightened state of awareness is a form of mindfulness, a meditation on space and your place within it. The modern architectural labyrinth reminds us that the journey through a building can be as meaningful as the destination, turning every corner into a question and every open space into a revelation. A page by Jorge Luis Borges unfolds into a library that is also a universe, a place where every corridor of text leads not to an exit, but to an infinite regress of new possibilities. This was the great postmodern turn in literature, where the labyrinth ceased to be merely a setting and became the very substance of the book itself. Writers like Borges, Umberto Eco, and Mark Z. Danielewski constructed their works as intricate, confounding puzzles, designed to challenge a reader's most basic assumptions about story and meaning. In Borges's story The Library of Babel, the cosmos is reimagined as a vast, perhaps infinite, network of hexagonal galleries filled with books. Most of these books are pure gibberish, but somewhere within the chaos lies every possible coherent book that has ever been or could ever be written. The despair of the librarians wandering this endless structure is not that they are lost in space, but that they are drowning in a sea of total information, where meaning is both omnipresent and eternally elusive. This is a labyrinth not of stone, but of language and chance, a philosophical nightmare about our quest for knowledge in a universe of overwhelming noise. Borges took this idea further in The Garden of Forking Paths, where a novel is revealed to be a labyrinth of time, not space. In this conception, every possible outcome of every decision branches off to create a new, parallel reality. The book you hold in your hands contains not one story, but all potential stories simultaneously. The reader is no longer a passive passenger on a linear track. You become an active navigator, forced to hold multiple, contradictory truths in your mind at once, constructing the narrative's meaning with every turn of the page. Umberto Eco perfected this form in his novel The Name of the Rose. The central mystery unfolds within a physical library built as a precise, forbidden labyrinth, but the true maze is the text itself, layered with scholarly footnotes, untranslatable phrases, and interwoven philosophical debates. To solve the crime, the reader must become a detective, sifting through medieval theology and semiotic theory, just as the characters search the darkened corridors. Decades later, Mark Z. Danielewski's House of Leaves would push this concept to a terrifying extreme. The book is a labyrinth in every sense, a nested nightmare of unreliable narrators, spiraling footnotes that lead to dead ends, and text that physically twists and turns on the page, sometimes requiring you to hold the book up to a mirror. The central horror is a house that is bigger on the inside than the outside, its dimensions constantly shifting, a physical manifestation of the unstable narrative you are desperately trying to navigate. Why would anyone willingly enter such a demanding literary maze? Because these books are a profound training ground for the modern mind. In an age of infinite scrolls, hyperlinks, and fractured news cycles, they mirror our own experience of navigating a world of too much information. They do not offer easy answers. Instead, they celebrate the act of seeking, of getting intellectually lost, and of finding your own path through the beautiful, terrifying garden of forking paths. This deep engagement with narrative structure, this need to map the unmappable, was a literary echo of a much older human practice, one that was simultaneously being rediscovered in the quiet corners of parks and churches. The screen itself becomes a labyrinth in Christopher Nolan's Memento, where the story unspools in reverse, forcing you to assemble the narrative from broken pieces. You are not merely watching a mystery, you are living inside one, your own mind scrambling to connect events just as the amnesiac protagonist does. This is cinema's unique power to manipulate time and perspective, constructing experiential mazes that challenge our most basic sense of reality. Directors like David Lynch specialize in this disorientation. In Mulholland Drive, a seemingly straightforward Hollywood mystery fractures into a surreal nightmare. Lynch uses jarring edits, recurring musical motifs, and doppelgangers to build a puzzle box with no single key, where a blue key can unlock an entire universe of hidden meaning. The film is a masterclass in unreliable narration, making you question every interaction and identity, turning the act of viewing into a desperate search for a center that may not exist. Darren Aronofsky's Pi traps you in the claustrophobic, spiraling mind of a mathematician, obsessed with finding a numerical pattern in the chaos of the stock market. The relentless black and white cinematography and a pulsing, industrial score create a sensory overload, mirroring the protagonist's own psychological unraveling as he navigates a labyrinth of his own genius and paranoia. These films are not just stories, they are architectures of confusion designed to be explored. Perhaps the most literal and terrifying example is the Overlook Hotel in Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. Its endless patterned carpets and impossibly shifting corridors are not just a setting, they are a physical manifestation of Jack Torrance's fractured psyche. You feel the maze closing in, the geography of the place becoming as unreliable as the narrator himself. Meanwhile, Japanese director Satoshi Kon's Paprika blurs the line between dreams and reality so completely that the labyrinth becomes a fluid, collapsing world. Characters leap from one subconscious into another, their identities merging with the dreamscape, forcing the audience to abandon any hope of a stable narrative ground. So how does willingly subjecting ourselves to such narrative chaos change us? It cultivates a sophisticated form of media literacy. Navigating a complex film narrative trains our brains to sit with ambiguity, to look for subtle clues, and to recognize that the most compelling truths are often hidden down the most winding path. This mental flexibility, this comfort with not having all the answers immediately, is a vital skill for navigating the fractured, multi-perspective stories of our own modern world. A simple maze of glowing dots and 4 ghosts defined an era, transforming the arcade into a digital labyrinth. Pac-Man's neon corridors were a pure, primal test of spatial memory and quick decision-making, a direct translation of the maze's ancient challenge onto a glowing screen. This was the seed from which an entire art form would grow. Decades later, pressing start on a game like Dark Souls feels like stepping into a myth. Its world of Lordran is not a series of levels but a single, intricately woven labyrinth of crumbling castles, poisoned swamps, and forgotten catacombs. Every path is a risk, every corner holds a potential threat, and every shortcut unlocked feels like a monumental discovery, your own personal Ariadne's thread leading you back to safety. This is the video game as an interactive labyrinth in its purest form, offering not a story to be told but a journey to be endured and mastered. Game designers are the modern Daedalus figures, architects of these compelling digital spaces. They carefully balance guidance and freedom using subtle environmental cues, a rewarding progression system, and a meticulously crafted map to make you feel both lost and found. In a Metroidvania game like Hollow Knight, your power comes from exploration itself. You navigate a vast, interconnected map, and each new ability you acquire acts like a key, unlocking previously inaccessible paths and reshaping your understanding of the entire world. The labyrinth literally expands with your own growing competence. This design philosophy creates a powerful feedback loop of challenge and reward, directly fulfilling a deep psychological need for agency. You are not watching Theseus, you are him, clutching the controller as your thread. Even the serene beauty of Monument Valley is a labyrinth, its impossible geometry and optical illusions a calm, meditative puzzle that trains your brain to see space in a new way. And the explosive popularity of digital escape rooms proves this desire is universal. We willingly lock ourselves into these virtual prisons for the sheer joy of collaborating, solving, and breaking free. Why does overcoming a difficult boss or finally mapping a treacherous zone feel so profoundly satisfying? Because these interactive labyrinths provide a safe container for our ancient hero's journey. They allow us to practice courage, perseverance, and problem-solving, granting us a clear, earned victory that the messy labyrinths of real life so often deny. Inside the humming core of an fMRI machine, a brain is charting an invisible path. The screen reveals a quiet fireworks display as the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex flare with brilliant color while the test subject navigates a virtual maze. This is not just a picture of thought, it is the labyrinth effect made visible in our own biology. Modern cognitive science confirms what ancient mythmakers intuited, that engaging with these structured challenges fundamentally rewires the human brain. Each time you plot a route through a puzzle, you are not just solving it, you are forging stronger neural pathways. This process, called neuroplasticity, is the brain's remarkable ability to reorganize itself by forming new connections throughout life. It is like a path through a field becoming a well-worn trail, and then a permanent road, making future journeys along that same route faster and more efficient. Researchers such as Dr. Michael Gazzaniga have demonstrated that the brain treats navigating a physical hedge, maze, and untangling a complex logical problem in almost identical ways. Both activities activate a core network responsible for creating a cognitive map, an internal model we use to understand relationships, anticipate consequences, and plot a course toward a goal, whether that goal is the center of a labyrinth or the solution to a difficult equation at work. Consider the mental rotation task, a classic cognitive assessment. You are shown a three-dimensional object and must determine if a second, rotated image depicts the same object. To solve it, your mind's eye must navigate the form, turning it along invisible axes, a silent, rapid journey through a spatial labyrinth. This skill is foundational for architects, surgeons, and engineers, but it also sharpens the mental agility we use to see a problem from a new angle. The hippocampus, that seahorse-shaped region deep in the brain, is our dedicated cartographer. It does not merely store spatial memories of your drive to work, it builds the cognitive maps for abstract concepts, helping you navigate the branching possibilities of a business strategy or the interpersonal dynamics of a team project. This is why regular engagement with puzzles is linked to staving off cognitive decline. It is a workout for the brain's core navigation system, keeping our internal maps detailed and reliable. The evidence extends beyond the lab. Tech giants famously use complex logic puzzles in their interviews, not because they expect you to calculate the volume of a manhole cover on the spot, but because they are searching for candidates whose brains are comfortable in the labyrinth. They want people who do not panic at a dead end, but who can backtrack, reorient, and try a new path with calm determination. This scientific understanding transforms the labyrinth from a metaphor into a tool. How can we intentionally weave these challenges into our own lives to hone this mental edge? It might be as simple as forsaking your GPS for a familiar neighborhood to strengthen your spatial recall, or dedicating time to a daily crossword or Sudoku puzzle to reinforce logical pathways. You could tackle a physical jigsaw puzzle, which demands visual pattern recognition and hypothesis testing, or dive into a strategy video game that requires long-term resource management and tactical planning. Even learning a new language is a labyrinth of grammar and vocabulary, each new word a step on a longer path. The goal is not to become a master puzzler, but to consistently engage the brain's innate navigation system. By choosing to get productively lost on a regular basis, we are not just playing a game, we are performing essential maintenance on the very cognitive machinery that helps us find our way through the greatest maze of all, the complex and unpredictable journey of a well-lived life. The classroom is silent, not from a lack of activity, but from intense concentration. Small groups of students huddle around a locked box, their faces lit by a shared sense of purpose. This is a breakout room in a school, a physical labyrinth of locks and puzzles that demands they weave together knowledge from history, mathematics, and literature to find a single solution. Education is undergoing a quiet revolution, one that trades dusty textbooks for the dynamic principles of the Labyrinth Effect. This is not about memorizing the path, but about learning how to navigate when no path is given. The pedagogical theory of constructivism provides the foundation for this shift. It argues that we do not simply receive knowledge, we actively construct it through experience. A student does not truly understand physics by reading about gravity in a book. They understand it by designing a ramp that allows their egg to survive a fall in a classroom challenge. This process of building knowledge through trial, error, and discovery is identical to the process of navigating a maze. Every wrong turn is not a failure, but a crucial piece of information that reshapes the mental map. This approach has spawned incredible new learning tools. Augmented reality games, developed by programs like the one at MIT, can transform a schoolyard into an ancient Roman settlement, forcing students to solve historical supply chain problems to ensure their virtual city survives. A history class might not just read about the Silk Road, but play a modified game of civilization, making strategic decisions about resource management and diplomatic alliances that bring the past to life with visceral immediacy. The same principles are being adopted in corporate training, where escape room scenarios teach teams communication and creative problem solving under pressure far more effectively than a slide deck presentation. Imagine a high school science lab that feels like a detective's quest. Students are not given a step-by-step recipe for an experiment. Instead, they receive a mysterious clue pointing them toward a chemical reaction. They must perform it correctly, and the result of that reaction provides the numerical code to a lockbox. Inside that box is not an answer, but the next clue, leading them deeper into a narrative of scientific discovery. Why does this method forge such resilient and adaptable minds? Because the real world rarely presents us with multiple-choice questions. Life is a sprawling, multicursal labyrinth of career changes, complex relationships, and unforeseen challenges. Rote learning prepares you for a test, but labyrinthine learning prepares you for the test of living. It teaches that the goal is not just to find the exit, but to value the skills you build with every step you take along the way. The hum of a design thinking workshop is the sound of a corporate labyrinth being mapped in real time. Whiteboards are covered in sprawling mind maps, each branch representing a user need, a technical limitation, or a market opportunity. Teams build rough prototypes not as final products, but as probes sent down a corridor to see where it leads. This iterative cycle of building, testing, and learning is the modern equivalent of dropping a pebble in a maze, a way to learn the layout through direct exploration. The entire business world has quietly adopted the labyrinth as its central metaphor, framing strategy and innovation as complex puzzles that demand creative navigation and a deep comfort with ambiguity. Management theorist Peter Senge gave this idea a powerful name, the learning organization. He envisioned a company not as a rigid machine, but as a living, dynamic system that must continuously learn and adapt its path through an ever-shifting competitive landscape. In this model, a company's greatest asset is not its current product, but its ability to redraw its internal map when faced with a new wall or an unexpected opening. This philosophy is codified into practical methodologies. Agile development breaks massive projects into short, manageable sprints, each one a quick journey down a single path to test its viability before committing more resources. The classic SWOT analysis is a tool for cartography, forcing a team to chart the internal strengths and weaknesses against the external opportunities and threats, creating a clearer picture of the terrain ahead. Scenario planning takes this further, imagining multiple possible futures and rehearsing the paths through each one, ensuring the organization is not caught off guard by a sudden turn in the market. Consider the path of a company like Apple. Its journey was never a straight line from garage to global dominance. It was a series of pivots and explorations, from the failed Apple Lisa computer to the triumphant return with the iMac and the world-changing iPhone. Each so-called failure was a dead end that provided crucial information, teaching the company invaluable lessons about design, user experience, and market desire. Tesla followed a similarly winding road, first building an expensive electric sports car to prove the technology was viable before navigating the complex maze of mass manufacturing and infrastructure to bring electric vehicles to the mainstream. This is the core of the Silicon Valley mantra, fail fast. It is not a celebration of failure, but a strategy for efficient navigation. Each wrong turn is recognized quickly, learned from, and used to recalibrate the entire journey. The question for any modern organization is not whether it will face labyrinths, but how it chooses to approach them. How can a company foster a culture that sees complex challenges not as paralyzing threats, but as engaging puzzles to be collectively solved? It requires rewarding curiosity over mere compliance, celebrating the learning from a well-reasoned mistake, and giving every employee a piece of Ariadne's thread, the authority and psychological safety to explore a new path. The businesses that master this internal culture are the ones that do not just survive the twists and turns of the global economy, but dance through them, constantly discovering new exits where others see only walls. Your thumb scrolls through an endless feed, a digital labyrinth built just for you. This is the social maze of the 21st century, a constantly shifting network of information, algorithms, and human connection that challenges our perception of reality itself. Where ancient labyrinths were built of stone, ours are woven from data streams, each personalized by an invisible architect. The sociologist Manuel Castells calls this the network society, a new social structure where power and meaning are generated within these global, labyrinthine webs of communication. This digital maze presents puzzles our ancestors could never have conceived. Conspiracy theories spread like wildfire down hidden corridors, amplified by algorithms that prioritize engagement over truth. Echo chambers form as high walls, trapping us with reflections of our own beliefs and shielding us from challenging perspectives. The simple act of maintaining privacy becomes a complex game, as our personal data is the currency used to build the very walls that surround us. The psychological toll is profound. Algorithmically curated content can lead us down rabbit holes of outrage or despair, each click reinforcing a path that feels uniquely ours, yet was designed for us by a machine. This environment has even given rise to a new social dynamic often called cancel culture. Think of it as a rapidly shifting maze of public opinion, where a single misstep can trigger a cascade of consequences, trapping individuals in a confusing and often unforgiving labyrinth of judgment with no clear exit. So how do we find our way? We need a new Ariadne's thread for the digital age. This thread is woven from media literacy, the skill to critically evaluate a source before sharing it down the corridor. It is strengthened by deliberate critical thinking exercises, questioning why a certain post makes you feel angry or validated. It sometimes requires a digital detox, the conscious choice to step out of the maze entirely to regain your sense of direction and perspective. The goal is not to escape the digital world, but to navigate it with intention, using these tools to guide us away from the noisy, confusing branches and toward paths of genuine connection and verifiable truth. Finding our personal path through this immense social labyrinth is perhaps the defining intellectual and ethical challenge of our connected lives. Sisyphus stands at the foot of the hill, the weight of the stone already familiar in his hands. His punishment is a labyrinth stripped of all complexity, a single, maddening corridor that leads only back to its own beginning. Albert Camus saw in this ancient myth the perfect portrait of the absurd, the human longing for meaning crashing against the universe's silent indifference. This is existentialism's core revelation, that life itself is the ultimate labyrinth, a confounding structure without a provided map or a promised center. Where the Cathedral labyrinth offered a path to God, the existential maze offers only the echo of our own footsteps. Soren Kierkegaard described the dizziness of freedom that comes from standing at a crossroads of infinite choice, while Jean-Paul Sartre insisted we are condemned to be free, forced to invent our essence through our actions in a world that provides no answers. The anxiety we feel is not a symptom of being lost, but the very condition of realizing we are the architects of our own path, responsible for every turn. Franz Kafka crafted the literary embodiment of this in his novel The Trial. His protagonist, Joseph K., is not trapped in a maze of stone, but in an impenetrable web of bureaucracy, accused of a crime that is never named, fighting a case in a court he can never find. The horror of his situation is not the punishment, but the labyrinth itself, a system designed to be incomprehensible, where the very search for logic is the source of the torment. This is the modern condition reflected in a philosophical mirror, the feeling of being a small cog in a vast, senseless machine. So how do we navigate a maze that has no exit? Camus proposed a radical solution, not suicide or blind faith, but revolt. We must imagine Sisyphus happy. The meaning is not in reaching the top of the hill, a goal that will never be achieved, but in the conscious struggle itself, in the perseverance and dignity he brings to his futile task. The philosophical practice of questioning everything, from social conventions to our own deepest beliefs, becomes our Ariadne's thread. It is the slow, deliberate process of testing the walls of our own prison, not to find a door, but to understand its contours and to claim the space as our own. What does it mean to live well within such a labyrinth? It means embracing the absurdity without surrendering to despair. It is to choose your path with conviction, to create your own meaning through relationships, work, and art, all the while knowing that the boulder will inevitably roll back down. The value is forged in the walking, in the authentic, unyielding spirit with which we meet each new turn, finding not an end to the maze, but a reason to keep moving through it. A blank canvas holds an infinity of possible paths. Watch the frantic energy of a time-lapse video capturing an artist at work, and you witness a mind navigating its own private labyrinth. The initial sketch is a first, bold step into the unknown, a promising corridor. Then comes the paint layered over, the lines erased and redrawn, a sudden turn into a dead end that demands a full retreat. This is the raw truth of the creative process, a journey that is almost never a straight line from idea to masterpiece. For the artist, the composer, the writer, creation is a deeply personal maze, its walls built from doubt and possibility, its winding routes defined by discarded drafts and sudden, luminous breakthroughs. The composer Igor Stravinsky once confessed that he learned his craft chiefly through his mistakes and pursuits of false assumptions. He understood that innovation is not a clean sprint, but a messy, iterative exploration where wrong turns are not failures, but essential lessons that teach the true shape of the path forward. Consider the chaotic yet controlled studio of Jackson Pollock. His famous drip paintings were not premeditated images, but the recorded evidence of a physical journey around the canvas. Each flung drop of paint was a step, a decision, a turn in a labyrinth of motion and color, with the final work being the unique map of that exploratory dance. In literature, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein was not born fully formed. It emerged from a storm of drafts and revisions, a monstrous idea that she had to patiently shape and reshape through countless nights, each version a new attempt to find the heart of her chilling tale. Modern musicians like Radiohead build labyrinths of sound, layering complex electronic textures over traditional rock structures, creating albums that reveal new corridors and hidden passages with every listen. Even the dreaded experience of writer's block is simply finding yourself stuck in a cul-de-sac of your own creative maze, staring at a wall you have not yet learned to see as a door. How does this labyrinthine view of creation help an aspiring artist persevere through the inevitable frustration? It normalizes the feeling of being lost. It reframes that disorientation not as a sign of inadequacy, but as a necessary, even productive part of the pilgrimage. Knowing that every great innovator has faced the same confusing corridors, the same moments of doubt, allows you to see your own creative struggle not as a unique failure, but as part of a timeless human tradition of finding a way through the dark. The goal is not to avoid the maze, but to accept its twists and trust that your persistence will eventually carve a path to a destination only you can reach. A simple equation gives birth to a universe of infinite intricacy. Zooming into the glowing heart of the Mandelbrot set reveals an endless cascade of seahorse tails and swirling galaxies, each one a perfect replica of the whole, a labyrinth with no final wall. This is the mathematical labyrinth, a realm of pure abstraction where the mind confronts puzzles about the very fabric of space and infinity. Topology, often called rubber sheet geometry, studies the properties that remain when you stretch or twist a shape. It asks not about distance but about connection. A coffee mug and a donut are topologically identical because each has one hole, a continuous path you could trace with your finger. This field gave us the Möbius strip, a twisted loop with only one side and one edge. Run your finger along its surface, and you will traverse both what seem to be the inside and the outside without ever lifting your hand, a perfect puzzle about perception. Then there is the Klein bottle, a theoretical surface that has no boundary and no interior. Imagine a bottle whose neck curves around and seamlessly merges with its base, a closed labyrinth with no inside or outside, a shape that can only truly exist in 4 dimensions. These are not just intellectual curiosities. The principles of topology are vital for understanding the knotted strands of DNA or the complex behavior of materials. Another profound example is the Hilbert curve, a single, crinkled line that twists and turns so perfectly it can fill an entire 2-dimensional plane. It is a 1-dimensional path that completely occupies a 2-dimensional space, a mathematical Ariadne's thread that can, in theory, map every point in a square. The work of Georg Cantor plunged into an even more dizzying maze, the labyrinth of infinity itself. He proved that some infinities are larger than others, that the infinite set of real numbers between 0 and 1 is uncountably vast, a conceptual maze with more paths than there are natural numbers to count them. This revelation was so unsettling to his contemporaries that it was met with fierce resistance. Benoit Mandelbrot gave us the language of fractals, geometric shapes that are self-similar at every scale. A tiny piece of a fern leaf looks like the whole branch. A jagged coastline reveals the same pattern of inlets whether viewed from a satellite or a rowboat. This fractal nature is embedded in the branching of our lungs, the forking of lightning, and the turbulent flow of water. Why does this abstract world hold such a powerful grip on our imagination, even for those who do not speak the language of calculus? Because these mathematical labyrinths offer a profound and comforting truth. They reveal a hidden order within what we mistake for chaos, showing that the universe, in all its complexity, is built from elegant, repeating patterns. They satisfy a deep, almost spiritual, human desire to find meaning and structure in the beautiful, tangled maze of existence. The air in a tropical rainforest is thick with the scent of damp earth and the calls of unseen creatures, a living labyrinth where every vine and leaf is part of an ancient, breathing puzzle. This is ecology's grand domain, the original and most profound maze humanity has ever encountered. It is a network of such staggering complexity that scientists are still tracing its countless paths, mapping food webs where the flutter of a butterfly's wing is connected to the health of a towering canopy tree. The entire system operates on principles of interdependence, a labyrinth where each species, from the smallest fungus to the largest predator, acts as a guide or a gatekeeper for countless others. This living puzzle gave rise to a radical idea, the Gaia hypothesis, proposed by scientist James Lovelock. He saw the Earth not as a collection of separate environments, but as a single, planetary-scale labyrinth, a complex, self-regulating system of feedback loops that maintains the conditions for life. It is a maze that thinks, breathes, and constantly adjusts its own walls. To understand an environmental challenge is to enter this maze. Tracking the migratory path of a hummingbird becomes a journey across continents, while predicting the effects of a warming ocean requires following invisible threads of cause and effect through the entire global climate. This thinking reveals phenomena like the trophic cascade, a powerful example of the labyrinth's hidden connections. In places like Yellowstone National Park, the reintroduction of wolves, a single keystone species, did not just control elk populations. It set off a chain reaction. With fewer elk browsing on them, willow and aspen trees began to recover along riverbanks. Their roots stabilized the soil, which changed the flow of the streams, creating new habitats for beavers and songbirds. The wolves, by simply walking back into their old corridors, rewrote the map of the entire valley. This is the core of the challenge. Nature's systems are profoundly nonlinear. A small action in one corridor can lead to an unexpected and monumental shift in another, making outcomes incredibly difficult to predict. Conservation efforts must therefore navigate a maze within a maze. A biologist's perfect plan to save a species is only one thread. It must be woven through the tangled politics of land rights, the economic needs of local communities, and the relentless pressure of global industry. Finding a true path to sustainability requires this kind of multifaceted navigation. So how does the labyrinth metaphor transform our approach to these immense problems? It forces us into systems thinking, to stop looking for a single villain or a simple switch to flip. It teaches humility, reminding us that we are not masters of this maze, but recent visitors still learning its basic rules. And most importantly, it shows that the only viable solutions are those that respect the woven, interconnected whole, acknowledging that to save one species, you must often save the entire intricate web it calls home. The Self-Help Aisle is a gallery of modern labyrinths, each book offering a unique map for the most personal maze of all, your own life. This is the Labyrinth Effect turned inward, where the twisting corridors are made of habits, beliefs, and past traumas, and the Minotaur is the version of yourself you are trying to overcome. The personal development movement has fully embraced this ancient structure, framing growth not as a straight line to a finish line, but as a winding journey of self-discovery where the process itself is the point. Mythologist Joseph Campbell gave this quest its most famous blueprint with the hero's journey, a narrative pattern found in stories across cultures that mirrors our own struggles. You are called to adventure, cross a threshold into the unknown, face trials and allies, and ultimately return transformed. This is not just a plot for movies, it is a mythological map for navigating your personal labyrinth, validating the fear and the triumph inherent in any real change. Modern psychology provides the practical tools for this journey. In cognitive behavioral therapy, a client learns to navigate the labyrinth of their own automatic thoughts. A negative belief is a dead end, and the therapist helps you identify it, challenge its validity, and backtrack to find a new, more adaptive path of thinking. It is a systematic method for remapping your mental corridors. Similarly, the GROW model used in life coaching is a direct application of labyrinth navigation. You start by defining a clear goal, the center of your current maze. You then take a ruthless inventory of your current reality, your exact starting point. Next, you explore all possible options, the various corridors and turns you could take. Finally, you cement your will, the commitment to take the first step and follow your thread. These are not abstract ideas, they are structured processes for moving through the confusion of personal change. We see this symbolism everywhere in popular self-help. A vision board is not just a collage of pictures, it is a visualization of your labyrinth center, a constant reminder of what you are walking toward. The practice of life mapping is a way to draw your own thread, charting where you have been to better understand the path ahead. Even the simple act of journaling becomes a way to mark your progress, noting each wrong turn and each moment of clarity, creating a record of your navigation through difficult emotions or complex decisions. So what does it truly take to succeed in this most intimate of mazes? The key is a powerful trio of qualities. You need self-awareness, the honest understanding of where you are standing right now in the dark. You need courage, the willingness to step forward into a corridor without knowing what awaits. And you need resilience, the strength to learn from every dead end rather than be defeated by it. The goal is not to find an exit and be done, but to become a better navigator, capable of moving through any labyrinth life places in your path with grace and determination. Deep within a quantum processor cooled to near absolute zero, qubits exist in a state of shimmering potential, a labyrinth not of walls but of probabilities. This is not the familiar on-off world of classical computing, but a realm where a single path can fork into countless directions simultaneously, a concept known as superposition. Here, the very act of navigating the maze changes its shape, with qubits entangled in such a way that the state of one instantly influences another, no matter the distance. This quantum labyrinth operates on principles that defy our everyday intuition, processing information in ways that could one day unravel the most complex puzzles of medicine, material science, and the universe itself. While classical computers, like a solitary Theseus, must walk each corridor one by one, a quantum machine explores the entire maze at once. This immense power is being harnessed to tackle problems that were previously unsolvable, such as modeling the intricate folding of proteins to discover new drugs or optimizing global supply chains with millions of variables. Yet, this new frontier is not just about raw computational force. It is a fundamental shift in how we conceive of a problem, viewing it not as a single path to a solution, but as a garden of forking paths where every possibility coexists until the final answer is observed. This same labyrinthine thinking fuels the explosive growth of artificial intelligence. Modern machine learning algorithms are not explicitly programmed with rules. Instead, they are set loose in vast data cathedrals, like the entire corpus of the internet or every known protein sequence, and left to find their own hidden pathways and patterns. They are digital cartographers of immense and invisible mazes, discovering correlations and solutions that are completely opaque to the human mind. This brings us to a profound and urgent question. Will these advanced artificial intelligences become our modern Daedalus, constructing social, economic, and informational labyrinths of such complexity that we become trapped within them? Or will they serve as a global Ariadne, offering us the thread to navigate the existential challenges of climate change, disease, and resource scarcity? This dilemma has sparked a critical field of research known as explainable AI. Scientists are now trying to build windows into these black box systems to understand not just the answer an AI provides, but the winding logical path it took to get there. Without this transparency, we risk creating a world run by systems whose reasoning we cannot follow or challenge. Futurists like Ray Kurzweil speak of a technological singularity, a point where technological growth becomes uncontrollable and irreversible. This is perhaps the ultimate labyrinth, an event horizon of complexity beyond which our human capacity for prediction fails. Similarly, physicists like Michio Kaku explore the cosmic labyrinth of multiverse theory, where every choice spawns a new universe, an infinite branching of reality that makes Borges's literary mazes seem quaint. How will our relationship with complexity change when we share the planet with intelligences that perceive labyrinths in the static of the cosmos and in the flow of global markets? The answers are not yet written, but the paths we take today in ethics, in regulation, and in our own curiosity will determine whether we are architects of this new world or merely passengers lost within its ever-expanding walls. From the stone-carved spirals of our ancestors to the quantum circuits of our future, the labyrinth has proven to be one of humanity's most enduring and powerful metaphors. This single, elegant structure of a winding path has guided our understanding of everything from the cosmos to the self, a universal key for unlocking complexity. We have walked its corridors from the myth of the Minotaur to the cathedrals of the medieval faithful, from the playful gardens of the Renaissance to the psychological models of Carl Jung. We have seen it reborn in the cold logic of the Enigma codebreakers and in the shimmering possibilities of quantum computing. Through every era, this simple concept has challenged generations to think more deeply, creatively, and resiliently, pushing the boundaries of what we believe is possible. The true Labyrinth Effect is this profound recognition that life's greatest challenges are not impenetrable walls or obstacles to be feared, but engaging puzzles to be navigated. Each dead end is not a failure but a crucial lesson that reshapes our mental map, and each hard-won breakthrough is a personal triumph that fuels our next journey. The writer Jorge Luis Borges perhaps said it best when he wrote, "The labyrinth is the world. It is not a cage, but the very terrain of our existence, a beautiful and confounding place where the only wrong turn is the one we refuse to learn from." Our task, then, is not to find a quick exit, but to walk this world with unyielding curiosity and the courage to face whatever waits around the next corner. Let this entire exploration be your Ariadne's thread. Take these ideas, these stories of thinkers and artists and scientists who embraced the maze, and carry them with you as you venture into your own personal, professional, and intellectual labyrinths. Discover for yourself the ingenious and resilient thinker you are inspired to become. If this journey through the twists and turns of history has sparked a new path of thought for you, we invite you to subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden patterns and mysteries that shape our world. And we would be honored to hear your own labyrinth stories in the comments below.